no matter where you are in the world, you make decisions on how to spend your time, attention, and money based on your core motivators.
I think one of the things that's really important, and this is going to be an ideology conversation as much as anything, like why are the things that you're doing, what are the things that you're doing? But I think there's an inherent temptation. I think in the church world, there is this natural draw and pull with a few checks and balances that says, like, the church isn't just me. It is supposed to be a group of people. Even if you end up structuring the church just kind of around the leader in the end of the day, like, there is a pull towards the fact that, like, we're building something that's pretty big and we're going to need lots of people to do it. And I think in the creation world, right, as we're looking at live streamers who are doing this missionally, as we're looking at, maybe someone who's creating a YouTube channel, they want to introduce people to Jesus in creative ways, and I know there's a lot of people like that who are listening to this. This is by, like, if church by its nature is communal, creation, content creation, and influence is by its nature very isolating, and so there is this almost like you're almost abnormal in this space if you have a team of people that are helping you, who are volunteering, who are behind you. And so there are so many people that are either flying solo or very, very close to solo with a pretty significant amount of influence over people's spiritual lives, with a lot of people looking to them. And what we are beginning to then generate is a tremendous number of spectators rather than people who are, deeply engaged. They're watching and spectating somebody else evangelize, watching, spectating someone else live in community, watching, spectating somebody else live out their faith. And not that there's anything necessarily wrong with that. It's just that there is a lack of, on the backside, impact for people's lives to be genuinely transformed, instead of it just being people sort of watching and spectating. You mentioned the one already. One of the things that I have loved about Intentional Church is how you guys take this toolbox of tools, and to be honest with you, like, I don't know that we've ever gotten past, I feel like we've been working with 3 tools for 5 years and are yet to master them. Like, these are sort of like the quintessential, easy to pick up, difficult to master type of things. Like, these are the things that can drive everything that you do, that you have to go back to over and over again, reassess, rerun. And then it's like, okay, we got work for the next 48 months. I kind of have an idea about where we're supposed to go, which is one of the things that I've loved about Intentional Church. Is you describe it as like a church operating system, right? Like your iPhone has an operating system, your computer has an operating system. Take me through a little bit of these pieces, because I think so many of them are wildly applicable to the average creator, the average person who's, they're trying to bring people to Jesus inside of their Dungeons and Dragons game group at their local board game shop, right? Like, I think this is really applicable to a lot more people than just churches.
Yeah. So the conversation we were just finishing up, I want to be really clear. What our latest iteration is around this concept of radical alignment to personal ownership of the Great Commission. And we have all kinds of resourcing to support that. But the foundation, before you get into the toolbox you reference, is really an ecclesiological, a little theological and missiological scriptural base for how to approach church influence, and so on and so forth. So,
okay, let's break down those 3 words, right? Because not everybody like you come from the church world. Pastors, you're going to be, maybe you'll be familiar with ecclesiology, theology, and missiology. Most people aren't. And so when we're talking about ecclesiology, this is the practice of the church, right? This is how the church is the church. We're talking about theology. This is the study of the nature and the character of God. And then missiology, this is about practice, right? This isn't just about like how the church is formed and what it's supposed to be about and what its ideologies are, or how its services are run. Missiology is like, how do we put rubber to road and practically live out our faith?
Spot on, man. Well defined. And you'll have to remind me when I use words that are churchy words. But our learning over, listen, we passed through working with 1,000 churches a year or so ago. We're over 1,200 now are engaged in some way with IC across 30 denominations and networks. You can't not touch those kind of churches and be learning at a high rate of speed what's going on. And so this is where we discovered these things you're talking about, the application of church, what as a believer you're supposed to be doing when you follow Jesus, what the study of all these things are deeply, deeply broken in the church, and they're actually not scriptural in the way we run most of our churches. So I can't emphasize enough how much this new season of IC under aligning itself under the banner of radical alignment by every person you influence who knows Jesus to personally own the Great Commission. Now, once you set that and conviction starts to set in leaders, and that's where I would challenge any of your listeners, you got to start there. Once that's set, then we have our what we call our one team toolbox, which is what you're familiar with. We use the terminology one, so everybody's tracking from my definition, from Luke 15, when Jesus tells a parable about, hey, if you were a shepherd and one of your sheep left or got lost, what would you do? You'd go find them and rescue them. You know, and so we use one a lot in our naming conventions. And so one team is how do you keep a team, which if some of your listeners are in isolation, I would really challenge that. Like, you got to not be in isolation. God intended us to be together. And so then the toolbox allows you as a group or a team to fight for how you align your strategies and structure so that you are honoring and building toward a biblical model of what church is supposed to be and what believers are supposed to be doing. And so in that toolbox, then we have an approach, Mark, I think you know about, it's like any system or process. We always start in what we call discovery, like asking your listeners can ask this, where are we at actually and how did we get here? And that takes a lot of courage, man. And we say to get to the last 10% of truth, let's be really honest through that biblical framework I referenced about where we're at today and how we got here. From that, those tools, I think, are some of the ones you probably love. Like we use with permission the 4 helpful lists from the Patterson Center. 4 helpful lists is a great tool. SWOT analysis would be another one that's out there. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. These are discovery type tools that you and your team could use. What's been your most humbling use of that tool, Mark?
You know, I think we've used a tremendous amount between, and I want to get into this idea of like, how do we find, discover, refine, and think through the context of the one? Like, I think that is going to be some of the most, for our people, some of the most helpful thing for us to talk about. I think between that, then going through the flywheel and then evaluating, using 4 helpful lists. And so like going through 4 helpful lists, by the way, guys, is like just sitting down and saying like, hey, you take an idea up on the board. So let's say you're just going to take your YouTube presence, for example, or maybe for us, it would be small groups. And we would say, okay, let's write everything down in 4 quadrants. One of those quadrants is, you know, it's working, it's going well. One of them is it's not working. One of them's it's confusing. And another one, it's just wrong, right? And I think I got that right, Doug. I might be forgetting it off the top of my head. Did I get one of my quadrants wrong?
You did, but it's okay, man. So the wrong and not working are together. So what's wrong, we want to fix. It's broken. But then you add the what's missing.
What's missing? Missing, confusing, wrong, and right? Kind of like those 4 categories. Yeah, and so we'll take time and pour through all of those. We go through what's missing. We want to clarify it, right? What's missing, or I'm sorry, what's confusing? We want to clarify it. What's missing? We want to add it. What's wrong? We want to fix it. What's right? We want to bolster it and double down on it. And it really helps us sort of dissect exactly what's going on inside of any of our areas. And we sort of, you know, we cycle back to that 4 helpful lists relatively often, especially when our staff is physically together, to say, hey, let's just take an area and let's really talk. We're kind of doing that with church growth right now. We're looking at going back to the drawing board and we're saying we don't think church growth in the digital context looks the same as it looks like in another church. We don't think it's get as many people in this live stream as we can. And what we have found is that online ministry is deeply relational when you're doing it well. And it's actually sometimes more relational than physical ministry, and it's less spectator than physical ministry. And you would think it's more. It's actually the exact opposite. And so we're like, well, if we would think that church growth strategies is getting many as people in the building as we can in the same spot on Sunday morning, we would think, oh, naturally, sure, get as many people in a live stream as you can, but maybe it's the exact opposite. What we're already experiencing is, it's probably the exact opposite. And so we're looking at church growth through this context of 4 helpful lists. But as we were developing that, one of the most powerful things, if you feel good talking about it, is talking about us. We were developing a one, like who was not just like the one person that I'm personally reaching to. We use that language all the time inside my church. I just did a leadership video with our team asking people to share, hey, who's your one? We want to pray for that one. And, people are bringing specific people up by name. I have a one, but then on top of that, our church also has a one, right? An archetype that we use to funnel all of our thoughts, all of our actions, all of our events through this archetype. Talk to me a little bit about developing that one for somebody.
Yeah, so in our process, we would move from discovery, that kind of use of the 4 helpful list, into design. And this becomes, as you're getting us to, just an anchoring spot for ministry design. When you conceptually design with your team, again, remember, this is an alignment tool, the kind of persona of a one, who may show up to your ministry setting or your YouTube channel, and it's a literal. We go through a very narrow demographic slice, age, very targeted age. In an in-person church, we're going to talk a lot about role. If it's a family, is it the mom, dad, and then really get into the descriptors of what their life looks like. And this traditionally has been used in church for a little while now, 20, 30 years, this kind of thinking. But the power isn't in that demographic slice. It's really the next layer below it. When you get to the core motivators, because no matter where you are in the world, you make decisions on how to spend your time, attention, and money based on your core motivators. Yeah. So that is the true power, aligning power of designing your ministry, your YouTube channel, or whatever, through an aligned lens as a group of the core motivator of somebody that we feel like God's laid on our heart that we should reach. And the irony is the demographic slice will fade some the more you understand and use the core motivators in your design, because you're into something. I don't know if your listeners are familiar with value propositions. Is that something like
I'm familiar with it, probably not something that's common inside. If it's common inside of the church world or business world or marketing world, there's a good chance it does not cross over into our world very often.
So value propositions are when a business or a content creator or anybody, a church, is approaching more as an institution. They are trying to tap into your core motivators and why you would purchase something. Yep. Or why you would give in the attention economy, why you would give your eyeballs to something longer, which then translates into money.
Yeah, sure. So what's the return on my investment? Like I'm investing time, attention, energy, watching your video, spending time in your live stream. What is the value that is being returned to me? Now, that's a very consumeristic way to think about things.
It is, and this is why it's so critical to have that biblical foundational base where it is you are thinking about how we are mobilizing and activating whoever we influence to become one aware and activated in their life. That is the only counterbalance. Otherwise, you will slip completely into institutional thinking and design, and you will be reinforcing consumeristic behavior in the people you're influencing. Is this making sense, Mark?
Yeah, I think it's making sense. Yeah.
You got to be very careful here. So these core motivators, this is what I harp on these days of what we've learned. These are the unlock.
Yeah. Okay, so walk me through a little bit of what does that look like to create an archetype? Because I think this is one of the key things that I think is very helpful. I also love this idea, which I've never thought of this can be taken too far. Like we can reinforce consumeristic thinking like this. If you come from the church world and you sort of follow the church growth movement and mega church movement at all, like you knew of Saddleback Sam, perhaps, right? Saddleback had sort of like this archetype of the individual, and they were super effective in not just knowing what clothes Sam wore, not just knowing his family situation, but of also knowing what were the things that Sam was afraid of, what are the things that motivated Sam to get out of bed in the morning? What are the things that he dreamed about? What were the things that really made Sam tick? And I think that, and I think what you're kind of getting at is a little bit of that, like not just, hey, we're trying to reach 25-year-old to 30-year-old guys who play Call of Duty. We're really you're asking about tapping more into, like, as you're creating this archetype of a person, really digging into what drives them.
That's right. Including really asking yourself the question deeply, why do they play Call of Duty so much? Mm-hmm. The amount of time they play, and why are they playing Call of Duty? Mm-hmm. And getting under the underlying core motivators of why they are making the decision to do that and not something else, or play a different game even. I'll give you an example. Right now I'm preparing for my last to graduate from high school, and she was a pretty good flag football quarterback. She holds a couple of high school records, and if you're not into sports, I'm sorry in advance. But here, I will betray my age. So we're doing an open house in a couple of weeks, and I asked her, could I put together a highlight reel of her kind of, she threw 54 touchdowns this year. There's a lot of touchdown passes.
Yeah.
And she said yes. And so here I am. I have never done video editing. I know I'm going to shock a lot of your listeners, aren't I? Never done video editing. So last night, I'm literally on AI platform researching for a beginner and I am making a choice to use, what's it called? Cut something. Do you know this video?
I don't know. Listen, I'm a video editing amateur. I'm a DaVinci Resolve guy. That's the one
that was one of the platforms. But maybe this will identify with some of your listeners. I am making the decision on choosing which through my motivators. I want to honor my daughter. I want to highlight her. I want to show off her prowess as a quarterback. I'm proud of her. It's like underlying, I'm making a choice because of the motivator. Otherwise, I probably would never engage video editing at all. I'm older. I don't have any desire to do video editing. So I think when you're a ministry designer or content creator, you got to be really paying attention if you want to advance forward. When we move into the design portion of our process, we are asking the question, where are we heading? And where are we heading as a team or a group? And this is one of the foundational pieces that will take you years to get your head completely around the lasting impacts of your one and their core motivators. It will take iterations and practice and learning of how you unlock more in a healthful way that doesn't create consumerism, the ones that you're trying to influence in your ministry or your networks.
Okay, so at Lux, one of the things that we've gone through this process, and we gathered, I think, my staff in Florida a couple of years ago, and we worked on this for hours, like multiple days. Like we were in the crucible for like 72 hours. We had like 25 hours of meetings in 3 days. Like we were really in it. And, we walked out. Our one has a screen name instead of a name. So our one is Shadow Slayer 329. 329 is their Enneagram triad. Shadow Slayer is a 27-year-old living in a studio apartment, coming home, working a dead-end job, coming home every night, not really having anything to do better than hanging out in Discord, has a small server, hangs out with his friends, hangs out with the same people every night, games together each night, games late enough that he doesn't have to think whenever he lays down. So he's always perpetually a little bit tired and exhausted because he's never getting enough sleep, because he doesn't like laying in bed and thinking about where his life is going at night. And so he games until he's purely exhausted and knows he's just going to hit the pillow and completely pass out. He doesn't really have anything bigger for his life to be invested in, but he does feel like culturally he's supposed to be sort of like pro LGBTQ plus. And so he's sort of like vaguely on board with that. He left the church at about 13 years old when he thought the people there were hypocrites and hasn't really considered coming back. And I think one of the things, like when we developed Shadow Slayer and we started looking at the Enneagram numbers and we started looking at some of the peacekeeping things and some of the want to impress people that came out of that, it really began to get us into what motivates Shadow Slayer. And then what we began to ask was things like, what is he afraid of? What is he afraid of? He's afraid of insignificance. He's afraid he's going to sleep at night, and And he doesn't want to think because he's afraid that the job that he has and the life that he's leading right now is going to lead him to an anonymous life of insignificance. And he doesn't know how to handle that. And he doesn't know how to get out of that. And he feels trapped in it. He's afraid of being alone. He's afraid of being alone long term. He's afraid of not having any propositions with women or any opportunities for the future. Now, not everything that we do only caters to this particular individual, but everything that we do does channel through this, like at some point or another. And then we had the question, like, if Shadow Slayer came to our church tomorrow, where would we want him to be 12 months from now?
Yeah.
And what are the things that are in place that would help him get there? And what are the things that are missing if we wanted him to get there? And that became the structures by which we began thinking through everything in our context, through everything in our ministry. And so it was, this is the person. And if the person that we're structuring everything to reach and we're thinking through showed up and they were with us for a year, we wouldn't want them to be the same. We would want this gospel saturation. We want them to own the Great Commission. We'd want them to be we want them to have a 1 in a year from now, right? We would want them to be more fulfilled, more driven, a higher percentage of participation in their physical life and in their journey, all of these sorts of things, more satisfied in their work. What are the things that need to be in place from our end as disciple makers and as leaders inside the church to equip the saints for work of ministry that help Shadow Slayer move from where he is today to where he would be if we wanted him to really move in 12 months. And I like those things for us, Doug, were absolute game changers when it came to prioritizing what we needed to build for our church and gutting things that didn't need to be there.